how we can potentially learn this. And think about two different types of companies. One company is, a startup that started 100 plus years ago. So they're evolutioning slowly. Every 10 years, they adjust, their generation change, and basically they grow slowly. But what happens with the VC company that Jose is working in? They have to deal with different companies. They invest in different startups, not just startups on initial level, but different companies within different domains, within different niches, and it's not something that they can use just one single framework.
Welcome to the Long-Term Strategic Planning Conference 2025 with my guest, Alexis Savkín. You are someone who is responsible or in charge of strategy for your company, and you are aware of lots of frameworks that you could use. However, you've begun to think that knowing all these frameworks is good in theory, but they can get in the way of simple practice. In other words, is there a simple way to combine just enough frameworks to get the job done while making things as simple as possible? You are actually convinced that your stakeholders would love you to make things easy to understand. I'm Francis Wade, your conference host, and here today to tackle this thorny problem is Alexis Savkín. We'll be looking at the strategy architecture, a way to organize a wide choice of frameworks and strategy tools into a single coherent approach. Alexis, welcome to the conference.
Thank you, Francis. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you. So, folks, Alexis is a senior strategy consultant, and he's also the CEO at BSC Designer, that's Balanced Scorecard Designer. He has over 20 years of experience in strategic planning. He also has a background in applied math and IT, infotech. So he brings a strong analytic and systems-oriented perspective, so strategy and performance management. Great to have him here. He was on a prior podcast. He's no stranger to us if you've been following the work that we've been doing here. But let's start as usual by telling a quick story. Story is
Sure.
about Jose. So Jose is a partner in a venture capital firm. The company specializes in finding new opportunities and fostering a portfolio of emerging ventures. After some success with a single tool, so he had a flash of sort of a moment where things were really working well on this one project. He used the BCG matrix, and he's now trying to get all the companies to follow the same methods. However, he's gotten some pushback because they're arguing that their needs are different. Their strategies don't fit the BCG matrix. And he had some other tools that they were like, we don't like to use that. We don't think it's appropriate. Not knowing what to do, because he really wants to do a good job. He took the problem to his partners in the company, and there was a split. Some agreed with him and some didn't. But one remark actually stuck with him. One of his partners said, well, maybe there's a common approach that you can develop that gives you flexibility and better buy-in and better fit. So maybe there's a way to have it all. So Alexis, this is a problem that you've seen in the work that you do.
Great story. Yes, actually, we see it all the days, and the root cause is probably that the discipline of strategic planning has a very long history. So it's like several decades of evolution, of development, of scientific studies, and now in the end, not in the end, hopefully, but in this stage, we have a lot of frameworks, a lot of tools that help us, and all those tools are really useful. Yeah, so it's the question of how we should combine them into something meaningful. Like in this case, how we should apply tools depending on the needs of specific startup. Yeah, because not all startup needs BCG matrix, obviously. Yeah, so
Right. Right. But you know, that's not the way we're taught, right? Because those folks who have MBAs or who have done a whole lot of reading, or whether you're self-taught or formally taught in strategy, the way it's taught is through these methods, these models, these frameworks. They're taught as if they are the solution, and all you need to do is study them, study 100 of them, and now pick the right one that you're going to use for a situation. And you're not taught that there's any kind of reason to pick one or the other. They're promoted as if they're all useful, which leaves someone like Jose kind of, not sure what to do, because it's as if they all have a place, isn't it? That's my take. What do you think?
Yeah, it's exactly what happens. Well, if you study physics or study mathematics, all the methods that we have, the scientific method, they have a kind of small text written, small label written, and this label says the application area of this specific tool is this one. So if we're
Right.
talking about the laws of physics, they work on certain level until certain velocities. Yeah, if velocity is approaching the speed of light, the different rules apply. If the scale is decreased to this molecular level, the different rules apply. So the same happens with business tools. All they have the application area. Yeah? So if it's I don't know, enterprise client who is doing a very specific job of scanning enterprise operating environment, then tools like pastel analysis will be good. Yeah? But if it is a startup, probably they don't need it or need to do it in a different way. So that's the root cause, that all the tools that they are taught in business schools, uh, they have their application area, and we need to understand what this application area, what limits are implied by this tool.
And that's a harder lesson to learn than just learning what the tool does or what the tool is for. It's more nuanced. It's more practical, of course, as you're saying. I don't know that there's any way to learn this other than trial and error. Is kind of the first thought that Jose needs to work with 100 more companies until he gets to the point where he can say, okay, there's a different approach that I need to do here. But on the way there, there's some pain because he currently thinks that he has the answer, and he's trying to apply that one tool over and over again, and he's having a problem. And the next problem he's going to have probably is that if he buys the argument, oh, I need to learn 100 other tools, he goes to learn the other 100, and now he's confused.
Yeah, exactly. Because when you have too many choices, how you connect them? And actually, you ask a very good question. Can we learn this? How we can potentially learn this? And think about two different types of companies. One company is, a startup that started 100 plus years ago. So they're evolutioning slowly. Every 10 years, they adjust, their generation change, and basically they grow slowly. But what happens with the VC company that Jose is working in? They have to deal with different companies. They invest in different startups, not just startups on initial level, but different companies within different domains, within different niches, and it's not something that they can use just one single framework. The solution, some VC companies have a very simple solution. In the beginning, they say, okay, we know it will be a problem, so we will work only with certain type of startups, like only on this stage of financing, only in this domain, like medical startups that are looking for certain initial investment, for example.
Right,
And that's
right.
one of the solution. But we don't want this. And well, we're using VC company as an example, but imagine other business domains where you cannot choose. Yeah, you cannot choose if you want to work with this specific company only. So a better solution would be to find some kind of method system architecture, if you want, to basically be able to combine different components, different strategic tools, and be able to use them effectively. So that's the logic I would recommend for any company that does not has this luxury of choosing whom choosing partners. They have to deal with diverse set of partners, diverse set of clients. Yeah, so basically any company working in the real world.
Okay, let me do a quick timeout because I don't want you to give the solution yet. I want you to save the solution until you give the Epiphany story.
Okay.
Otherwise, it takes away the 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 problem stirring nature of the part that we're in. It's not a
I,
problem. You just edit it.
I hope it's not for recording. It's something intimate, but let's put it anyway. I'm
Don't
going to.
worry. When I do I'll make a note. Let me just make a note. So, where are we at? It's just easy to edit. We'll just edit it that way. 10 minutes. It's at the 9-minute mark. 1 second. Let me just make a little note here. 9 minutes.
No, it's just a joke, so to perfectly comfortable sharing it.
Great. At 9 minutes, we'll. No, so if you, no, if you, I don't want you to share the
It's
screen.
public. This one is public, so no problems.
No, but what I mean is in terms of screen sharing, I don't want you to
Uh,
share this one yet.
okay, so you will tell me. You will
Yeah,
tell me when.
right. When we do the Epiphany, then it'll be perfect for you to share it then.
Okay, so first we explain it, the story, and then we share the.
Right. So we're not solving the problem yet. We're just telling how bad it is.
Okay.
I hope I didn't confuse. Don't let me confuse you, Don't let me don't let
Now,
me drive you
Epiphany,
crazy either.
this diagram, this complex diagram, yeah.
Right. So when you give your story, that's when you should share the diagram.
Okay.
Right, hold on a second. Let me just say at 9 minutes. We offer the solution for the Epiphany. Okay. All right, great. Okay, so I put a note in so that when I edit it, I'll edit it you talking about the problem part, and then we'll come back to the solution, how to solve it in minutes to come. Then I need I had a question I wanted to ask you about the problem. Lost my train of thought too. Hmm. Alexis, I'm like a problem, man. I'm a pain in the neck.
The problem
Um,
was solved without even formulating it.
essentially, yeah, that's kind of what happened. But let me see if I get back my train of thought. You say you talked about the simplistic things. You're talking about the reasons people the ways people try to solve the problem, but it doesn't work. I'll just ask you to say some more about that. Can you say some more about the well, hold on, let me pause first so I know where to edit this. Alexis, can you say some more about the issues that people have when they try to solve this problem using kind of rules of thumb? So they haven't thought about it, but they do their best to come up with a solution. What happens to them when they try to solve it the wrong way?
Yeah. So basically, the biggest problem that without following any structure, it results in what we call spaghetti style thing. Yeah. So it looks like a solution. It looks like a solution, but like if you want to visualize it, you have 20 plus spreadsheets. They are named differently. They are maintained by different people, and this mess can survive for a certain time. Yeah, but it's really hard to maintain it. It's really hard to update it. And what happens when people cannot update it, cannot maintain it? They don't like it first, and then they basically stop doing it. They abandon it, and those spreadsheets they leave. Their life cycle will be like annual strategic planning cycle. Yeah. So basically, every year you get back to these spreadsheets, you look at them and say, "What's a mess? What can I
Right,
do about it?" So you need to find, you need to find energy to fix things, but there is no energy. So basically, it's more or less the state of these frameworks results into this state when they are not dying yet, but they are not producing any tangible impact on the company. So formally, you ticked
Right.
the checkbox of having this framework of creating, but in practice, the problem is still there. Yeah.
Right. Right. And with Jose, for example, I wonder if this is a problem also that when he does his analysis of a prospective company to invest in, one of the criteria could be how fast can we get back our investment? So they get into an investment. It looks like a prior investment, and they made money on the last one. They cashed out after 3 years and made a killing. So he sees something that looks similar in the same industry. They invest, and after they invest, they realize that the return is not going to come for 15 years instead. So whatever rule of thumb he applied was the incorrect one, and it led to an investment in a company that they really shouldn't have invested in because the tools he was using were too simple. Have you seen that happen at all?
Yes, it's actually naturally. Yeah. So with VC companies, we had just few clients who use this, but it's more or less typical in all industries because of what's happening. Like imagine the landscape we're dealing with. It's not like something stable. It's
Mm-hmm.
changing. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
the stakeholders changing. Like with this example with VC. So VC is thinking about startup that follows certain principles, and they
Right.
did. They followed these principles 10 years ago. But now startups are learning from whatever pitch decks, they're learning from other startups, and they are adjusting their presentations. So the presentations look differently, and they trying to game the system or using different approaches. So the whole landscape, the point is that the whole landscape is changing.
Right.
Again, the problem is that the business landscape is changing. We have more uncertainties. If we're shifting from the startups and VC and established companies, we have more regulations. We have more needs for risk management, for
More
compliance.
complexity,
Exactly. So
more
one more
variability.
is complexity.
Right. More tumult, more ups and downs, more unpredictability. Which seems to me that Jose, with his one trick pony, his one single tool approach, is going to be less and less effective because the world is becoming more and more complex. Is that the case also?
Exactly. And actually, I think we were talking about this more or less in June 2024. We were had discussion around the same topics, and it sounds that time it sounds like theory. We were discussing uncertainties, ambiguities, complexities, and today 2025, who can argue? Yeah,
Right.
uncertainty with all these tariffs, with all these
Right.
it exists. The cybersecurity threats, yes, they became real, like the uncertainties related to extreme weather events. Yeah, like this year here in Spain, we had I can say two extreme weather events, and in both cases, for example, we say it's not connected to our business. No, but in this case, for example, it was loss of connectivity, yeah, in all country. So it's something that experts, strategists were talking a few years ago. It's just becoming reality, and it's more obvious for more people now. Yeah, so I think it's one of the problems with perceptions. What you and me and other experts we talk about on LinkedIn, yeah,
Right.
it's obvious for us, but it's still not obvious for companies that are not in strategic planning, not so actively in strategic planning. Yeah. So
Right.
basically, we see that what we have prognosed, what we talked about last year, we just see it in practice.
Right. And the two events in Spain were you had a hurricane or a typhoon
Was flooding in Valencia. So flooding in
flooding.
Valencia, and later I think the blackout can be named the hurricane.
Right.
It was here in Canary Islands, but it was not that dangerous because of people were prepared.
Okay. So you had a flood, a hurricane, and a blackout in the space of a year.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, and it's not, especially the blackout is not something you expect to happen in a European country. Yeah, 10 hours blackout, and especially when you look for official diagnosis of the problem and you hear complexity,
Right.
it's not the kind of answer you expect to hear, but actually that's the answer. So complexity is here and it's here to stay, and uncertainty is here, it's here to stay.
So that means that Jose, for example, so Jose has tried super simplicity using one tool, but it's not going to work for him to try 100 tools either. It's not, becoming fluent and then confused by 100 tools isn't the solution either. And I think we're getting to that point where we could share maybe that moment where you shared with me that you got an email from a client and
Yeah.
well, share the story with us, and it took you on a different path and a different line of thinking. And I know you have some slides to share as well.
Yeah, sure. So first, the story. Basically, you mentioned the complexity and simplicity, and I'm a specialist. I believe, okay, yeah, but on our website we have everything on a good level of complexity, not too complex and not too simple, and that was my belief. But then another client emailed me asking a simple question. Okay, you have like many articles on your website, all of useful information, and so on and so forth. But give me a simple answer. We have mission and vision. And how do I cascade it through my company, through my enterprise? It's like a huge organization. And I was about to prepare, another email with links to some articles, to some diagrams, but then I realized, okay, no, it was too complex. It was too complex, and we need to have something similar. Actually, we're going to share my slides, and you will see what I'm talking about. So that's how the one of the typical diagram we used before to explain how to move from stakeholders, they need the high level things to the level of specific goals to do this, what is called scientifically value-based decomposition. The diagram was perfect. It had connection to the stakeholders, learning loops, metrics, risks, but too complex. Yeah.
It's complex, Alexis. I agree
How
with that.
it looks. Okay, now it's became a little bit simplified.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and not that it answers all the questions, but it's that the diagram we use to start a dialogue. And this diagram is something that most of the clients associate themselves with. So they see their organization there. Someone will say, okay, yeah, we know we are on corporate strategy, and so okay, let's discuss. Others say, we are this unit too, and okay, so we're there. Others say, okay, when we know we're in supporting function with HR. Yeah, but probably the most important point that we addressed with this diagram is that any company, any strategy should start with stakeholders, the stakeholders and their needs. And so, as I said on all my workshops, on all my trainings, if you want to remember just one thing about strategic planning, remember this one. Start with stakeholders and their needs. If you do this one, you're like 50%, you have the solution. Yeah, so that's a story how we discovered that we ourselves are not simplistic enough, simple enough. We're too complex. And
Your
yeah,
clients wanted it. Your clients wanted it simpler than you were giving it. In other words,
exactly,
you were
exactly.
offering the frameworks you were offering, or the combination. If you go back to the prior slide, that combination of solutions in one space was
Yes,
too
something like this.
complex for them to understand. Kind of what kind of what Jose would get to if he were at the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah, so yeah, I think I should stop sharing so we can.
Or you want to?
Okay.
I was gonna think you want to share the next slide, the one you had in the sequence, because I I thought it offered a great solution to that one, right? A great solution to Jose's problem. Can you walk us through how you would advise Jose to
Yeah, so
use your
that's
concept?
one of the versions. One of the versions, because you always need to adapt it to the reality of certain company or certain business. So the
Right.
most important parts here is the strategy core, like stakeholders, mission, vision. So that's the part, the component that will remain all the time in any organization. The stakeholders, so we think about internal, external, legal systems, customers, end users, investors, all this we need to understand to map. Then we have what it comes under VC master plan. We have a main strategy of this VC company. Yeah. So there we organize the goals, the sub goals. We can also add there some risks. And of course, we can quantify these goals. Yeah? Because if we don't quantify, we are talking about vague goals, but we want to fight with this uncertainty, with these vague goals, so we quantify them. And then we have two directions for this company to look at. We have investment prospects on the top and portfolio companies, the companies where actually the company invested in. Yeah.
In other words, the prospects are the ones they could invest in, and the portfolio companies are the ones they're already invested in.
Yeah, so early stage, when you look at the company and you think like if they're the right investment, so probably you will have on the top of this funnel like 100 companies. And in this case, you need to you need to communicate with them in some way. And to communicate, you can talk to people, yeah, to understand if their values resonate with the values of your company. But eventually, you will find a certain set of criteria that you use for evaluating those.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get them on board, the strategy changes a little bit. Now, instead of validating them, they are already validated. So what you're looking for helping them to grow on the one hand, and on the other hand, you're looking for some feedback from them. So you're looking for to understanding if they're doing good and where you can help. So the actions of the company or the VC firm is changing in this case, yeah, to to different approach. Yeah. So basically, that's an overview.
Great. So what you would recommend to Jose is tell us how the strategy architecture pulls it all together and sort of is the solution. If you want to
So
use this diagram or
yeah, we're getting to the solution part, which is actually the architecture. So first of all, what we want to achieve with architecture, we want it to be maintainable. So one of the problem of Jose was that this framework, it was applicable to one of the companies, but not to another.
right.
And
Right.
that's what you need to recognize first, and then you need to implement it in your strategy. So in this case, you have different frameworks, and you can apply them effectively to different companies in your portfolio. Yeah, and whatever change, imagine that you decided to replace analytical method you used for one company. You just replace it for one company, not for whole organization. Yeah. So this modularity, this vision of the strategy as a small component, it adds value. But at the same time, these components are connected. Like in the case of due diligence and decision-making criteria, they're connected by specific criteria. And in terms of performance monitoring, probably there are some specific different performance metrics in the scorecards of portfolio companies. But on the top, they might be reduced to few simple metrics understandable by VC firm. Yeah. So this kind of modularity is what you want to achieve with a strategy. First of all,
Gotcha.
organize things and then establish the communication mechanics. If it's not VC firm, we see it as a performance reporting via metrics and via different indicators.
Gotcha. So for the case of Jose, these companies that they have investments in are different from each other, and don't necessarily they don't communicate with each other. But at his level, however, as the investor or as the VC firm, their investments need to make sense. So the strategies that the companies are using need to roll up and address the VC firm's overall strategy in some kind of coherent way. So
Exactly.
so so Jose is not just simply someone who, and I hate to characterize VC firms this way, but someone who's just driving to get his money back out. He's trying to make $1 zillion as fast as possible. I know there are some people who are definitely like that, but on another level, he's a shepherd of different strategies, and he has to ride above all the strategies that the investment companies are making, the invested companies are making. He needs to be up at this level, pulling the strategies together and having them communicate with the VC company in ways that are effective. It strikes me that his job is similar to, for example, a president of a group of companies, of a conglomerate where they owned companies have their own strategies and they don't necessarily communicate with each other. They may not communicate with each other at all, like a Berkshire Hathaway, for example, but they all do need to relate to some overall strategic architecture. And that has to have, from the point of view of Warren Buffett or the CEO of a conglomerate, that has to have coherence. And his job is really to manage that coherence. Am I understanding
Exactly.
what you're saying
Actually,
correctly?
you hit the target with the example of group of companies. That's another typical example we have. Because when you're just one company, you're fine. You have a similar culture, similar level of maturity across your strategy. But when you are a group of companies, so normally it's the result of acquisitions. Yeah, you did several acquisitions, and now you have different companies, different culture, different level of maturity. How to connect them? Again, that's another typical case where companies are looking for the architecture, the strategy architecture. And again, illustrating it with the case of VC firm, imagine that Jose need to deal with um, some startups that have a very good founders, so they know what they're doing. They have this major culture inside. So this is one story. And another story, there are, for example, uh, guys who just have a good technology, but they're not experienced in building startups. So their maturity level in terms of planning in general and specifically in strategic planning, it's quite low. So also need to combine in some way all these differences and how to do it. The answer in this case is, again, to think a little bit about architecture. Uh, I think in this case it helps to think about the architecture like in architecture for building. Yeah. So in our houses we design different spaces. We have an entry hall where you just come from the street, probably some to help you enter your house. Yeah, so you
Mm-hmm.
one role, and you have your
Mm-hmm.
bedroom where you relax. Yeah, it's another
Mm-hmm.
role. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a living room when you socialize. Yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
different roles, and you need to connect them. You need to do it easier for stakeholders, those who live in the house. And the same
Mm-hmm.
happens with when we talk about companies.
Mm-hmm.
Different stakeholders involved, different companies involved, different needs, different functions. And it's interesting to look at the examples. For example, the Chinese company called Haier, that they do home appliance. They work in like hundreds of small companies, yeah, small independent startups, and well, they're actually now as an example of innovative structure in terms of operational structure. But the same happens on strategic level as well.
Right. It's just harder because operationally, you're looking to do something over and over again, something repetitive. But strategy, even if you're in the same industry as you were 2 years ago, you know, yeah, it might be what you think is a stable industry. I suspect in the last 6 months, you've seen more change than you saw in the last 10 years, 20 years, probably combined. And all of a sudden, that stability that you thought you had, you were building these one-room houses maybe, all of a sudden, these new levels of complexity and uncertainty have entered that mean that you can't just stick to one low level. You now need to be at this next higher level. What Jose is detecting, he needs to be at this higher level that he's never occupied before.
Exactly, and that's actually AI is everywhere now, and that's where we can reflect a little bit about the effect of AI. Yeah, because
Right,
eventually, in any industry, this operational level, low level, will be automated or replaced by AI. Yeah,
right,
and what happens? AI is good at this job. Yeah, and it will be replaced sooner or later, but AI is not really good at organizing a theme architecture. For
right.
example, in software development, right now you can ask AI to write a code and it will write perfect code,
Perfect
especially
code, right,
if you know how to prompt it better.
right,
But it fails to understand the whole concept, the
right,
whole idea, the
right,
architecture if you want. And the same applies to strategy. So eventually, the operational things they will be automated. Yeah?
right,
But these things on the level of strategy, how to organize it so that the strategy is coherent, yeah, so
right,
that it's actually makes sense, not just doing its job, but it's actually creating synergy, some value. That's where we need human touch. That's where we need strategy architecture.
right. So I've seen, I think I'm seeing this commonality in different conversations I've had here at the conference or different recordings, in that the advent of hyper uncertainty as of January this year, that the whole world has gone topsy, the whole business world has gone topsy turvy, has meant that a lot of things that companies thought were stable were taken away and they were made unstable. Partnerships that they thought they could rely on, like Canada relied on the US.
Yeah.
And, it was like, we'll just, in my mind, I don't know if this is true, but we'll just we can focus on the short term because the long term is pretty much predictable because the US is not going to change. That was the assumption coming into January. And I imagine that Canadian companies are now scrambling because they need to take care of their own long term for the first time in this way. They need to find stable partnerships all over the world that will give them a long term future. And it's not just, oh, we'll just rely on the US. I'm sure they didn't get around in our boardroom and say we'll rely on the US, but it was never stated, maybe, but it was just assumed. So the uncertainty has introduced this level of complexity, which means that the nice short term small strategy that you used to follow that worked for 40 years without interruption no longer works. And you now
Exactly.
need to move up a level. No, you now need strategy architecture, not just, this is probably tactics, but you need more than tactics now because the stability that you enjoyed has been taken away. So you now need to craft your own stability. And I don't think it can come from thinking of strategy the same way as they used to, which was short term. Now it needs to have this overriding long term objective. For example, this long term architecture in which they can now thrive. Tell me if I'm tacking on this other idea to what you said, but does that make any sense to you?
Absolutely. So the beauty of good strategy architecture is that you can connect something new to it. Like in your house, you have an electric grid,
Right,
yeah. And
right,
when it was designed, it was not designed with the with all home appliance. Yeah, when you first get to a house, you don't have all your appliance, all your devices, but it was designed in the way that you can plug in and that's it. You can use it. Okay, with certain limits, like you cannot plug in your washing machine to a normal outlet. Yeah, it should have a special cable coming to it thick enough to be able to work with this level of power. But anyway, it was designed to, in this way to work like plug and play. So now what will happen? Like companies, as you mentioned, they see that uncertainty is here, complexity is here, and you
Right.
cannot solve it overnight. Yeah, you cannot solve it overnight. But if you have a good strategy architecture, you can start plugging in required tools. And one of the tools that people are plugging in now is analysis of external factors. Yeah, so okay, there is uncertainty in January. Let's at least think about it a little bit more formally. What we can do, what other possibilities are. We can just do some scenario planning. Not saying that you will be using it, but at least you added this small component. And if you create some strategy, at least you have a rationale that explains why you created it. At least you're better in communicating this to all the stakeholders. Like, for example, universities. Right now in the United States, I guess they need a lot of communicating skills to explain what they're doing and why. And this applies to any business domain. So the strategy architecture is not, a universal solution to the problem, but it's the base that you can use. Yeah, it's something that you can just rely on and start building additional things, additional modules, additional components. Probably a new fancy framework will appear. So you will just add it to the strategy architecture.
Alexis,
Yes,
you
I
there?
think someone had an internet connection problem.
It was my internet dropped just all of a sudden.
Uncertainty.
Absolutely. What was the last point you made? Could you repeat it so that I can hear it and then respond to it?
Yeah, so basically the idea is that having architecture is not a solution yet, but it's a
Right.
base that we can use to start building the solution.
Right. So in a way, what I'm hearing you say is that when the uncertainty of 2025, which probably we'll remember for the rest of our lives, right? Rest of our business lives, is a little bit like the pandemic. When this uncertainty all of a sudden happened, we are realizing, or we are starting to realize, that there is a strategy architecture that was, maybe it was always there, we just didn't know it was there, that there was this higher level that we were being guided by, that we weren't seeing and that we weren't actively aware of.
Yeah.
And that now that the uncertainty has taken away all that we thought was solid, that those companies that are thinking about it more are saying, we had a lot of assumptions about how we should do strategy, and they're not working. They're not going to work in the long term. We never even talked about them. Like, for example, Jose probably didn't tell his partners, listen, I'm going to rely on the BCG matrix from now on exclusively. He probably didn't tell them that. He just did it. But they would now tell him in today's dispensation that that way of your things, the way you used to do them, they're no longer going to work because the world is changing too much. And I suspect there are lots of companies now that are revisiting the way the components, to use your language, the components that they have in their strategy architecture. And they're looking at it and saying, hey, where did these components come from? I don't know. And MBA, we all went to the similar schools,
Exactly.
we read the same books. I don't know. They say, but we didn't sit down and decide this is what our strategic architecture was made of. We didn't put these components in there. We just inherited a whole bunch of stuff, and now it's not working, and now we need to revisit and rethink. And my thought is that long-term thinking, long-term strategy is one of those components that other companies just said, we don't need that. Things are so good, or we don't need to think about that. What do you think of that comment as we close out?
Yeah, actually, the question is the right strategy. It's always the right strategy. So, whatever strategy you design, you need to be able to question it. Yeah. And what does it mean in practice? In practice, it means that if you find that certain part, certain framework is not working well, you need to be able to just replace it. Like, again, home appliance. If your washing machine is dead, what you do? You buy a new
You
one.
buy a new one.
That's why, yeah, new one which is connected to internet, whatever its function is, has lower power consumption, and you can program all this stuff. So that's the benefit of having electric network in our houses and the general architecture. It's maintainable. And the same happens with a strategy. If you found that some framework is not what you currently can use, not something that most of your stakeholders understand, not something that is generating insights for you, yeah, why not replace it? And that's what we see, that companies are actually starting playing with it more. You mentioned Canada. It was a funny case. When all these events started happening, a few of our Canada-based clients asked us, can we switch from monthly to annual billing, please? It was a sign for me that these guys are preparing for something big. Yes. So it will not happen overnight. From practical side, we see, okay, in this case, switching from monthly to annual to save a little bit. We see the dialogues we have with other clients, they're shifting to a different perspective, so more practical. More interest from some domains and less interest from another domains. So some domains are silent for now, and some regions are more active now. Yeah, so
Right.
it's like how we see it from practical point of view. And I think it's like 50-50. Some companies like have a fear to change anything, so they just don't invest in this. Other companies, they think it's right point to innovate. Yeah, and they're looking, okay, yeah, it's guys. Now everything is broken. Yeah, everything is unpredictable. So let's try new things. And if
Right.
if it won't work, no one will blame us. In current situation, any solution is good solution. Yeah. So
We're doing our best given the
uncertainty. We live in the
circumstances.
period of uncertainty.
Right. So, Alexis, we're at the end of our time together. How can folks hear more or learn more about the strategy architecture, the BSc designer, and the work that you're doing? Where can
Yeah,
they
so
find you?
actually, by entering to our website, we have a lot of free materials, a lot of visuals like this. People will find my contacts to LinkedIn. Yeah, so basically, there it's a good starting point for any discussion, any things related to strategy automation as well. For our platform, there is a free plan, so anyone can start playing and start, structuring a little bit this idea of strategy architecture. So we are easy to start, and hopefully we're adding value to
What's the
our.
address of your website again, Alexis?
It's bcdesigner.com.
bscdesigner.com.
.com.
Great. bscdesigner.com. Folks, make sure you visit Alexis's website, find out the work that they're doing, and drop a comment so that others will know where to find this conversation. Let us know what you got from it and recommend it to other people here at the conference. Alexis Savkín, thank you so much for being with us. And folks, we'll see you elsewhere in a different video. Take care, all the best.
Thank you.